Hello everyone and welcome to the Rift. Today I want to talk about a tournament I hosted. That's right, every Saturday I host tournaments. If you want to play, there's a sign up link in the description. And if you want to learn how to use Tabletop Simulator, which is the simulator we use to play the game, I've got a video on my channel explaining how you can use it. Alright, another day, another tournament, and yet another Victor win, baby. Let's go. Victor might actually be one of the best decks. I think he's pretty good. I'll get into the actual tier list later, but yeah, I think people have refined the Victor list over the course of the last few weeks and last few tournaments to a point where, yeah, I think he's actually really strong and a really good contender for this format. Talking about the overall meta of this tournament, what people played. The most played deck, unsurprisingly, is Kaisa, with 18 people, then followed by Victor with 9. Both of those are unsurprising. Timo with 7, gaining a little bit of popularity, I guess. He actually did decently well this tournament. He got his first top 8 spot ever, at least in these events. Maybe the first top 8 in any bigger event. I'm not sure, but maybe. We've got 7 Master Yi, that's unsurprising. Also an incredibly strong deck. 5 Darius, very strong. Annie, pretty good. Ari, also pretty good. Set, pretty underrepresented in this tournament. He did extremely well in the tournament in the days prior, hosted by Piltover Archive, but not many people played him for this event, just 4. Jinx, only 4 people played her. Misfortune, 4 as well. Yasuo, 3. Lux, just 3. Lee Sin, just 3. Leona, just 3. Volibear, just 3. I think all of these decks struggle to varying degrees. Misfortune actually got her first ever top cut spot in this event. Again, potentially in any big event, but that's the first time for us, and there's just one lonely Giga Chad playing Garen. We split our tournament over 2 days this time, Saturday and Sunday. The first day was a bunch of Swiss, and the second day was a top 16 bracket for day 2. In this bracket, we've got 5 Kaisas, 2 Yis, 2 Victors, a Jinx, a Darius, 2 Timos, an Ari, a Leona, and a Misfortune. Advancing to our top 8, 2 Kaisas made it through, both Victors, a Yi, a Timo, and a Misfortune. Top 4, Yi and Kaisa, Victor and MF, and then our finals was Yi versus Victor, and of course, it's a Victor victory. Here's the nice top 8 pie chart with our 3 Kaisas, arguably the best deck in the game currently. I think it's up for debate whether it's Kaisa or Yi, or maybe Set as well. Could be in that conversation too. Victor, I think, is arguably tier 1. Master Yi as well, arguably tier 1. I think Misfortune and Timo, this is the only time we've seen them. They could get better, but I think they're just rogue for now. In terms of win rate data, it's pretty much the same as last time, so I'm not going to talk about it this time. I'll talk about it at some point in the future. As far as an updated tier list goes, as the meta has been developing, I think definitely Kaisa, Set, and Yi are firmly in tier 1 as the best decks in the game, at least for now, until people figure out other stuff. I think Victor is arguable to be up here with how many tournaments he's been winning. I think that deck has gone through quite a few evolutions as well to make it better into the current format. In tier 2, all these decks are perfectly playable, but I do think there's a noticeable difference in power level between these and tier 1 decks. We've got Darius, Ari, Annie, Timo, and Misfortune. I think all of these have nice matchups into some of the top decks to some degree, but they definitely don't have as good of overall matchup spreads as the decks in the top tier do, and they definitely don't have the performance or the play rate to prove their viability beyond this point, I don't think. We see some of these decks in Top Cut most of the time, and some of them sometimes. In the decks I've put in Rogue, I think there's another noticeable difference in power between all of the decks in this tier and all the decks in the tier above. Potentially Jinx could be moved up to tier 2, or maybe Lee Sin with further testing. I don't think so though. I think Master Yi is probably just overall a better pick, and Volibear, Yasuo, and Leona we still have yet to see make a top cut spot. I don't think these decks are completely not viable. I think you could potentially still make a top cut spot with them in a larger tournament, but you're definitely fighting an uphill battle if you're picking one of these decks. And I've placed Lux and Garen into not viable just because I really don't think they have much they can do into this current format. Lux's Legend definitely has potential in future sets. I think free card draw is really good. It's just, I think she's just really held back by needing to build around her Legend really heavily, and when you do so, you're playing a bunch of cards that don't really line up that well into the current format. And if you're trying to just build like a standard good stuff blue-yellow deck, I think Victor just does that job a lot better. For deck lists, we've got our first place deck by Freaks. Congrats on the victory. I did a winner interview with them on stream, so if you want to learn about this deck in detail, you can go watch that. But it's basically just a good stuff mid-range deck that plays some solid units and good removal spells that are pretty well positioned into the current format, and a nice top-end finisher with Watcher. They said on stream they'd like to change the 3 retreat in the main deck and the Shen in the sideboard, and that's probably a good idea. I think 3 retreat is a little bit of an over-adjustment into Kaisa being so heavily represented into the format. Maybe you can get away with playing 2 of them, or just cut it entirely. I don't see any copies of Riptide Rex in the deck, and that's definitely a card I'd be interested in adding. I think that's just an excellent card in this format, especially in a deck like this. The Leona in the sideboard is an excellent inclusion against Master Yi, which this deck can sometimes struggle into, and that card just fixes that matchup pretty nicely. Next, we've got our second place deck by Presto, which is Master Yi. This is also an extremely standard list. We've seen this exact list before, I believe, and this is just the exact same list that I am also playing. Just a bunch of great units. First Mate is incredible. Kiana is amazing in the current format. You definitely want to max out on 3 of those cards. Snapvine is also great, and White Flame is really good in the mirror match and most matchups. And the 3 Zonya's Hourglass is amazing into Kaisa, and sometimes other matchups as well. Yeah, really solid list, extremely consistent. Lots of nice tools that sit well into the format. There's no wonder why this deck is tier 1. In the sideboard, 3 Unyielding Spirit into Kaisa, an excellent card. Also good into mid-range Victor as well. Spirit's Refuge at 3 copies. I'm currently doing 2 in my deck just because I don't think it's that amazing when you draw it by itself. You really need it in combination with other cards like Unyielding Spirit and Defy to get its maximum value and have your opponent triggering deflect multiple times, which is what you want to do with this card. If you just get 1 deflect trigger and that's it, it's not that amazing. The Stand United, they said they want to cut from the sideboard, and I probably agree. I'd play a second copy of Blitzcrank, which seems really good into the mirror match. Next up, we've got Kaisa by Vendorti, top 4 list. This is a pretty standard Kaisa list at this point. Aggro Tempo Kaisa is a menace in the format, arguably the best deck right now. They commented on their deck list post that the sideboard needs a lot of work, and maining 2 retreats is a bad idea, which I would be inclined to agree with. I don't think you need 2 of them. It's mainly an inclusion as a tech option against the mirror match, and I think 1 copy should suffice. This deck draws so many cards that you can reasonably see it in most games against the mirror match, and in other matchups, it's really not that amazing. The Riptide Rex is more of a non-standard inclusion. I do kind of like it. Not too sure if it's the correct play or not, but it seems solid in theory. It's definitely a good card in the format. A lot of other decks are playing it. Yeah, really solid list. The only thing I'd really want is 1 less retreat and 1 more copy of Smokescreen in the main deck. I think that card's amazing. All right, our other top 4, Misfortune. This deck is definitely interesting. The first time it's gotten a top cut placement. This is Ramp Dazzling Aurora MF. You just essentially completely sacrifice your early game, not playing anything except drawing cards and ramping with spells to get up to a Dazzling Aurora. If that card can stick on the board and you get it down early, it can completely take over games by itself, but if anything ever happens to it, you probably just lose. This is a really scary deck into some matchups, and other matchups like Victor, you just can't really do anything. They've mentioned in their submission in Discord that they didn't like the Snapvine in main, same with Rebuke, and they'd maybe want to test out some Fighter Flight. To me, Rebuke seems really good into this format in general, and it does make sense in this deck to slow the opponent down so you have time to build up into Aurora, but you do pay 2 purple runes for it, so yeah, it might just be too expensive to run in this deck. Fighter Flight is probably a better option to slow your opponent down. For the sideboard, Unyielding Spirit is really nice to protect your units for super cheap once you actually get them on the board. Sabotage takes cards that potentially threaten Aurora, which is extremely important post sideboard. Sometimes you skip a turn of playing Aurora just to play a Sabotage or a Mind Splitter instead to take the opponent's removal for Aurora from their hand so that you can play Aurora next turn uncontested. Yeah, pretty streamlined and solid list. I just think this deck struggles really hard into certain matchups, which is why it doesn't have success very often. Alright, here's a top 8 Kaisa list. This is a pretty standard list apart from the main deck of 2 Noxus Hopeful. It's good into some matchups. I'm currently siding 2 copies, and some people opt to play the 1 main deck Acathian Rain, some people don't. I think it's up to personal preference, really. It's a great game 1 blowout against certain decks, but if you aren't seeing that many of that deck, then it probably shouldn't be in the main. It really just depends on the format format. And not playing the third copy of Darius, I really like 3 Darius in this deck. Maybe you can get away with only playing 2 if you're on a Cathian Rain. I don't know though. And in the side, we've got Vi, pretty good into some matchups like Ramp. We're in here for green decks for that final turn. Just make them not able to respond to anything you do. The other Cathian Rain for matchups where it's good into like Darius or Victor. And 1 Dr. Muno, I'm assuming for the mirror because sometimes it's just hard to get rid of this guy. And if he can stick on a battlefield and just hold it, then that's really good. Alright, here's our second top 8 Victor list. A very different list. This is more of a go wide aggro build of Victor, playing 3 copies of Siphon Power and Grand Stratagem. Synergize really well with what this deck is trying to do. Your overall game plan of going wide, make a bunch of tokens, and then make them threatening with these cards. Play a bunch of small units and just flood the board. Only playing 2 Cruel Patron is interesting. I really like 3 copies of that card in this build of the deck especially. 2 Singularity is nice, and 2 Thousand-Tailed Watcher is your top end. You're also playing 3 Consult the Past to just draw a bunch more cards once you spend a bunch of stuff in your hand to just play a bunch of cheap units. In the side, we've got 2 Retreat for Kaisa, great inclusion, especially against the Cathian Rain. This deck can sometimes be a bit weak to that card. 3 copies of Salvage just to deal with Darius's hook shenanigans. Also just completely shuts down dazzling decks incidentally. And 3 copies of Riptide Rex, which is pretty good against Master Yi and Ari. Next, we've got our Teemo. The first time Teemo's appeared in top 8. This is Teemo by Timmy the Kaido player. This is honestly about what I'd expect for a Teemo deck. Stack Deck and Blue Teemo are great for triggering Nocturne's effect. There's just a bunch of really good hidden cards in here. Some great blue cards like Sprite Mother, Singularity, Watcher. Seems like a lot of blue decks are just playing all those cards, as well as Smokescreen. We've got Reconsult the Past, which is great because it's one of the best hidden cards to play, and you can just flip it whenever and still get its full value, which is great for situations like when you need to flip something to buff up your Ember Monk and swing in. In the side, we've got 2 Retreats for Kaisa, as well as other blue decks that play other cards like Singularity. 2 Rebuke. This is good into a lot of things, honestly. Set Master Yi when they push with giant units, even Kaisa when they make a Watcher play or something with Darius. We've got 2 Fading Memories, just a good removal spell into some matchups. Probably really good into decks like Master Yi and Ari that hold on fields. Same as Riptide Rex. That card is really good against those decks. The other top 8 Kaisa list wasn't posted, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume it's pretty similar to all the other lists we've seen. They're all pretty similar to each other. I do have some deck lists from our top 16. I've got another Teemo list here. This seems to be built a little bit differently, playing blue seals and a lot more blue top end in the deck to ramp into them. They're building with blue Victor that generates some tokens, and they're opting to play cards like Sprite Call and Marauder. Again, I'm not familiar with Teemo really, but in general, I just don't like seals in the current format. I don't really think they do anything. And playing 3 copies of blue Victor, I'm not too sure about. I'm not really sure how well the tokens work in this deck. He also doesn't really do that much on his own. He kind of needs some setup. You need to be able to hold a battlefield while playing a bunch of cards on the opponent's turn, probably hidden cards, to actually get a ton of value out of this guy. Next, we've got another top 16 Kaisa. This deck is opting to play 2 Orb and 2 Shakedown, cards that I think most people have been cutting from their lists recently, myself included. I just think other cards are a little more impactful than Orb, and Shakedown I still haven't seen be that impactful. Next, we have an Ari list. This list is pretty close to what people have been playing mostly, except for the Wind Walls. I think most people have cut that card now. It really just doesn't have great targets in the format. There's Grand Stratagem, but that's basically it, and only one of the builds of Victor even plays that. Next, last but not least, we got Leona in top 16. We saw a feature match of this deck, and honestly, it didn't seem that bad. It did lose the match, but it was honestly closer than I was expecting. The list is pretty interesting. It doesn't have a single 2-drop unit in the deck. It seems more like a very mid-range, maybe control-heavy deck. There's a lot of cards to control the board in here. Charm, Hidden Blade, Cull, even Rune Prison and Zenith Blade help you control the board. You can just stun multiple things and then play a green Leona, walk into combat and kill a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I still think this deck struggles overall. It does have a 33% win rate at our tournaments, but it honestly wasn't that bad, at least on feature match. I think it could potentially do well into certain decks, but all your removal spells and interaction line up really poorly into Victor, I think. This deck has some protection for its own units, but it really isn't playing that many units in the deck, so I think if it starts losing a few too many, then it'll probably just fall apart. Yeah, some matchups like Victor, all your removal, Hidden Blade Blade, Pull, Rune Prison, Zenith Blade. Just don't do anything against tokens. It might be good against some decks, but yeah, I can see why this deck is struggling overall right now. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date, and I've got a lot of neat videos planned, so make sure you don't miss them in the future. Alright, that's all I have to say today. Take care.